Ringo Starr was always the funny Beatle, the one who smiled and joked while John and Paul got all the credit. But at 84, he's dropping a bomb nobody expected. Behind that happy face was a man who drank so much he blacked out, attacked his wife in a drug-fueled rage, and abandoned his kids. Even worse, he almost died twice, and nobody knew. From his secret health crisis to the violent incident that forced him into rehab, this is the Ringo story fans never imagined. Ringo Starr was born Richard Starkey on July 7, 1940, in a small house at 9 Madron Street in Liverpool's Dingle district. His parents, Richard Starkey Sr. and Elsie Glee Starkey, worked hard to provide for their family. His father had been a dock worker before becoming a baker, and his mother worked at a bakery. Life was already tough, but things got worse when his father left the family in 1943. Ringo was only 3 years old. His mother took on several jobs to support them. She worked as a maid, then as a barmaid, doing everything she could to make ends meet. She was protective of her son, always looking out for him, especially as he faced one health crisis after another. At 6 years old, Ringo had to undergo surgery for appendicitis. What should have been a routine operation turned into something far worse. He developed peritonitis, a dangerous infection that spread through his body. He slipped into a coma and spent a full year recovering at Myrtle Street Children's Hospital. Just as he started catching up with school, another illness struck. At 13, he contracted tuberculosis, a disease that killed thousands in England each year. This time, he was sent to a sanatorium where he remained for 2 years. Being stuck in bed for so long meant falling behind in school, but it also introduced him to something that would change his life. To keep the children entertained, the hospital staff organized music sessions. Ringo picked up percussion instruments, learning to hit colored dots on drums and maracas. He didn't know it at the time, but this was the beginning of his love for drumming. By the time he recovered, school no longer seemed important. He had missed too much and struggled to catch up. At 15, he dropped out without any qualifications. Like most working-class boys in Liverpool, he went straight into the workforce. He took different jobs, including a brief stint with British Rail before finding work as a machinist. It was steady work, but lacked passion for him. Ringo Starr's journey into music started in 1957 when he and his neighbor Eddie Miles formed the Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group. Skiffle was everywhere in Britain at the time. It was a raw mix of folk, blues, and jazz played with simple instruments. People used washboards and tea chests instead of drums and bass guitars. Ringo found his own way of keeping rhythm by tapping a thimble on a washboard. The band played local gigs and quickly gained attention. Songs like Rock Island Line and Walking Cane made them a hit in Liverpool. They even performed at the Cavern Club, a venue that would later become legendary in Beatles history. Ringo made his debut there on July 31st, 1957. That Christmas changed everything. Ringo's stepfather gave him his first drum kit. It wasn't much, a snare drum, a bass drum, and a makeshift cymbal. But it was enough. The band sounded better with a real drummer, and their popularity grew. Even with their success, the skiffle craze was fading by early 1958. American rock and roll was taking over. The Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group broke up, and Ringo was left searching for his next step. In November 1959, an opportunity came when Rory Storm and the Hurricanes needed a drummer. They were one of Liverpool's best rock and roll bands. More polished and more professional. Ringo joined and soon took on a new identity. He became Ringo Starr, a name inspired by the rings he always wore and his love for country music. Rory Storm gave him a special moment in their shows called Star Time, where Ringo stepped forward to sing. He performed songs like Boys by the Shirelles, not Cheryl's, adding to his growing stage presence. The Hurricanes weren't just popular in Liverpool, they played all over. In early 1960, they secured a residency at Butlins Holiday Camp in Wales. They earned $25 per week, a solid income at the time. By October, they were in Hamburg, Germany, playing at the Kaiserkeller Club. The Beatles were there too. But back. Then, the Hurricanes were the bigger band. Ringo first met John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison during that residency. Sometimes when the Beatles' drummer Pete Best couldn't perform, Ringo filled in. One night on October 15, 1960, he recorded Summertime with John, Paul, George, and Rory Storm's bassist, Lou Walters. It was the first time Ringo played with the people who would later become his bandmates. The Beatles never forgot those nights in Hamburg. Ringo's drumming stood out. His laid-back personality fit in naturally. Pete Best, on the other hand, struggled to connect with the rest of the band. By mid-1962, it was clear they needed a change. Best's drumming didn't match their evolving sound, and his distant attitude made things worse. They decided to replace him. On August 15, 1962, John Lennon and Paul McCartney drove from Liverpool to Pobble Healy to find Ringo. They made him an offer, $25 per week to join the Beatles, more than he was making with Rory Storm. At first, he hesitated. He was loyal to the Hurricanes but knew the Beatles had something special. He took the risk. 2 days later, on August 16th, Pete Best was fired. Ringo was officially a Beatle. His first show with them was on August 18th at Hume Hall in Birkenhead. When Ringo Starr replaced Pete Best as the Beatles' drummer in August 1962. It was anything but smooth. Fans loyal to Pete were furious. At their first official gig with Ringo at Hume Hall in Birkenhead, the crowd chanted, "Pete forever, Ringo never." The backlash was even worse at the Cavern Club, where half the audience openly protested. Things got so heated that George Harrison was punched in the eye later that same day. He was even hit by a bus. The hostility was intense, but the Beatles stood their ground. George and Paul had pushed for Ringo because of his superior drumming, and John was on board too. Ringo had already filled in for Pete before and had impressed the group with his skill and reliability. Over time, the protests faded. Fans began to notice what Ringo brought to the band. His drumming had a swing, a looseness that elevated their sound. I didn't like it. He wasn't flashy, but his rock-solid playing gave the Beatles a new level of confidence. Even Pete Best, decades later, admitted the decision was justified. It was a turning point. With Ringo, the band had its final lineup, and their rise to global fame was unstoppable. As the Beatles evolved, so did Ringo's role. On Rubber Soul, 1965, his steady drumming anchored the band's shift into folk rock. His rhythms on Norwegian, Wood blended seamlessly with George's sitar, a bold new direction in rock music. Then came Revolver, 1966, where Ringo's playing became even more experimental. His hypnotic drum pattern on Tomorrow Never Knows was unlike anything he'd done before. And of course, Yellow Submarine showcased his playful side, making him even more beloved by fans. By Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967, one of the greatest albums of all time, Ringo had fully cemented his place in the band's sound. His drumming on With a Little Help from My Friends was simple but perfect, providing a steady groove for his heartfelt vocal performance. He wasn't just the drummer anymore, he was an essential part of the band's identity. Ringo didn't sing often, but when he did, it was memorable. Yellow Submarine was written specifically for his voice. It was lighthearted and fun, perfectly suited to his personality. It became an anthem loved by fans of all ages. Then came With a Little Help from My Friends, a song crafted to fit his vocal style. His voice wasn't technically impressive, but it was warm, relatable, and honest. That sincerity made the song timeless. Both tracks became fan favorites, proving that Ringo was more than just the guy behind the drums. By the late 1960s, the Beatles were no longer the same band they had once been. The unity that had defined their early years was gone. Creative differences, personal tensions, and outside influences were tearing them apart. Paul McCartney wanted to keep the band focused on structured pop melodies. John Lennon was moving toward experimental music guided by Yoko Ono. George Harrison had grown into a strong songwriter with tracks like Here Comes the Sun and Something, but he often felt overlooked. Yoko Ono's presence in the studio made things worse. From 1968 on, she was always by Lennon's side, even during recording sessions. The band had never allowed outsiders in before, so this was a major change. Ono gave creative input, and Lennon took her ideas seriously. The others felt she was interfering. Paul McCartney in particular saw this as a problem. During Revolution 9, he accused Lennon of letting Ono push the band into avant-garde territory. Harrison also struggled with the shift. His friendship with Lennon wasn't the same anymore. Things boiled over during the White Album sessions in 1968. The mood in the studio was tense. Everyone felt isolated, but Ringo Starr took it the hardest. He believed the others were closer to each other than they were to him. But in reality, all of them felt the same way. McCartney was especially critical of his drumming, even taking over on Back in the USSR. Ringo felt it deeply. He later said he felt unloved and out of it, like he was being left behind while the others grew closer. It reached a breaking point. Frustrated and exhausted, he quit the band. While the rest of the Beatles struggled without him, Ringo escaped to Sardinia. There he found inspiration, writing Octopus's Garden, a song that would later appear on Abbey Road. Meanwhile, back in London, the band realized how much they needed him. They sent him telegrams calling him the best rock and roll drummer in the world, and even decorated his drum kit with flowers. 2 weeks later, he returned, but the cracks in the band's unity were growing deeper. When he walked into the studio on September 4th, George Harrison had decorated his drum kit with flowers spelling out, "Welcome back." It was a rare moment of kindness during a difficult time, but the problems hadn't gone away. The band's personal relationships had changed. Lennon was becoming more withdrawn. His heroin use made things worse. Arguments were common. Sometimes, Abbey Road engineers were even asked to leave the room so the band could fight in private. By September 1969, Lennon had made up his mind. He told the others he was leaving the band, calling it a divorce. But their business manager Alan Klein convinced him to keep it quiet. There were financial issues to settle, and an official breakup could complicate things. For a while, the world still saw them as the Beatles. Behind closed doors, they were already finished. Ringo took the breakup hard. He had always been the easygoing one, the steady presence in the group. Now, even he felt lost. During the final years, he had tried to keep peace between Lennon and McCartney, but it was impossible. Their relationship had fallen apart. Business disagreements made things even worse. McCartney wanted Linda Eastman's father to manage the band. Lennon wanted Alan Klein. No one was willing to compromise. By 1970, it was over. The Beatles were done. Each member went their own way. For Ringo, this meant proving he could stand on his own, but instead of jumping into rock music, he took a different route. With his first album, Sentimental Journey, released on March 27, 1970, this wasn't a typical debut. It was a collection of old standards, songs from the 1940s and 1950s that he grew up hearing in Liverpool. He wanted to make something personal, something his mother and family would enjoy. George Martin produced the album, bringing in well-known arrangers like Quincy Jones and Paul McCartney's father-in-law, Lee Eastman. The cover showed Ringo standing outside a Liverpool pub, a nod to his roots. Critics weren't sure what to think. Some called it charming. Others found it confusing, but despite mixed reviews, the album reached the top 10 in the UK and climbed to number 22 on the US Billboard charts. It wasn't a massive hit, but it proved that Ringo was willing to take risks. Later that same year, in October 1970, he made an even bolder move. His second solo album, Bokus of Blues, was pure country music. It was recorded in Nashville in just 2 days with producer Pete Drake and a team of top country musicians. The title track, written by Buzz Rabin, charted in both America and Germany. Critics praised Ringo's easygoing delivery. Cashbox called it a fine country single. The album didn't sell in huge numbers, but it showed another side of him. He wasn't just the drummer from the Beatles, he was an artist exploring whatever music he loved. The real breakthrough came in April 1971 when Ringo released It. It Don't Come Easy, his first major solo hit, was co-written with George Harrison, though Harrison wasn't officially credited. The lyrics spoke about persistence and trust, themes that felt personal to Ringo. With Harrison producing and adding his signature slide guitar, the song had a polished but heartfelt sound. It peaked at number 4 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and hit number 1 in Canada. It even outperformed singles from his former bandmates at the time. Then came Photograph, released in October 1973. Ringo and Harrison wrote it together, creating one of Ringo's most emotional songs. The lyrics told a story of lost love, and the rich production made it unforgettable. The song reached number 1 in the US and Canada and made the top 10 in the UK. That same year, he scored another number 1 hit with You're 16, a cover of a 1960 Johnny Burnett song. It was released in December 1973 and became a massive success in early 1974. The music video featured Carrie Fisher as Ringo's love interest, adding a playful touch. By now, it was clear Ringo Starr was a solo star. A big reason for this success was his 1973 album Ringo. It was his most successful solo project and felt like a Beatles reunion. All 3 of his former bandmates contributed in some way. John Lennon wrote I'm the Greatest just for Ringo. George Harrison played guitar on several tracks. Paul McCartney co-wrote and performed on 6 O'Clock, though he wasn't in the studio at the same time as the others. The album was produced by Richard Perry and featured an impressive lineup of musicians, including Mark Bolan, Billy Preston, Harry Nilsson, and members of the band. It reached number 2 in the US and produced 2 huge hits, Photograph and You're 16. Critics praised Ringo's personality and the album's mix of rock, pop, and heartfelt ballads. It was one of the biggest successes any former Beatle had after the band broke up. Ringo wasn't just making music, he also stepped into acting. In 1970, he starred alongside Peter Sellers in The Magic Christian, a dark comedy about greed and corruption based on a novel by Terry Southern. The film had a surreal style and featured cameos from stars like Raquel Welch and Christopher Lee. Ringo played Youngman Grand, the adopted son of a billionaire played by Sellers. The film got mixed reviews, but Ringo's performance was well received then. In 1981, he took the lead role in Caveman, a slapstick prehistoric comedy. He played Atuk, a small but clever caveman who challenges the brutish leader of his tribe. The film had over-the-top humor, a made-up caveman language, and even stop-motion dinosaurs. Critics didn't love it, but it became a cult favorite over time. More importantly, it changed Ringo's life in a personal way. During filming, he met actress Barbara Bach. They fell in love and got married soon after. After the Beatles broke up in 1970, Ringo Starr's life took a dark turn. Success was still there, but so was something else: alcohol. Drinking became part of his routine, then part of his identity. He wasn't just having a few drinks, he was lost in a world of excess, spending most nights in clubs and barely remembering. The performances he gave, marijuana and cocaine, were part of the mix too. He later admitted that he was living in a haze, unable to recall entire events, including a show he played with the Beach Boys in Washington. At home, things weren't any better. His marriage to Maureen Cox had lasted 10 years, but by 1975, it was over. The relationship had started as a fairy tale. Ringo and Maureen had married in 1965 when she was just 18. They had 3 children together. But his lifestyle pulled them apart. He was unfaithful, absent, and sinking deeper into addiction. Then came something even more unexpected. George Harrison, his close friend and former bandmate, fell in love with Maureen. It happened at a dinner party. In the middle of the evening, George confessed his feelings in front of everyone. It wasn't just an awkward moment, it was the start of an affair. Ringo was devastated but didn't explode in anger. Instead, he simply said, "Better you than someone we don't know." The situation shattered more than just his marriage. Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd, was heartbroken too. She later responded by returning to her modeling career and having an affair of her own. Even after the divorce, Ringo's drinking only got worse. He had become part of the Hollywood Vampires, a notorious drinking club that included Alice Cooper, Keith Moon, and other rock stars who lived for excess. What had started as musicians partying together turned into something dangerous. Ringo later admitted that they had stopped being musicians who used drugs. They had become junkies dabbling in music. His career was still moving forward, but his addiction was taking over. Then, in 1980, everything changed again. On the set of Caveman, where he played a clumsy prehistoric man, he met Barbara Bach. She was a well-known actress, and at first they were just co-stars, but by the end of filming their connection had turned into something real. They fell for each other fast, and in April 1981 they got married. It seemed like a new beginning, but addiction still had its grip on both of them. Their drinking and drug use continued. Ringo would start his mornings with champagne and spend his days freebasing cocaine. Barbara struggled with substance abuse too. Their home became a place of chaos. Bach's daughter later admitted that she often hid in books because her mother and stepfather were too intoxicated to be present. It wasn't just self-destruction anymore. It was hurting the people around them. The turning point came in 1988. One night Ringo lost control, drunk and high. He destroyed parts of their home. It didn't stop there. He physically attacked Barbara in a fit of rage so violent that their staff feared she might not survive. That moment changed everything. They knew they couldn't go on like this. If they didn't stop, one of them might not make it. That year they checked into Sierra Tucson Rehabilitation Clinic in Arizona. It was the first time Ringo had made a serious attempt to get clean. The 6-week program was brutal, but it worked. He later admitted that even after rehab, sobriety was a battle. There were nights when he had to fight the urge to drink sitting on his drum seat. After shows gripping the edges just to keep himself from giving in. But he stayed strong. In 1989, Ringo Starr made a bold move that changed his career forever. He formed the All-Starr Band, a group unlike any other. The idea came from producer David Fishoff, who wanted to create a band where every musician on stage was a star in their own right. The first lineup was packed with legendary artists: Joe Walsh from the Eagles, Niels Lofgren from Crazy Horse, Dr. John, Billy Preston, Rick Danko, Levon Helm from the band, and Clarence Clemens from the E Street Band. Each musician brought their own hits to the setlist, making every show a mix of classic rock, soul, and pop. What made the All-Starr Band unique was its rotating lineup. Every tour featured different artists, keeping the concerts fresh and exciting. In later years, musicians like Todd Rundgren, Burton Cummings from the Guess Who, and Randy Bachman from Bachman-Turner Overdrive joined the band. The setlist always included Ringo's Beatles classics and solo hits, but it also featured songs from each band member's catalog. Audiences got to hear everything, from It Don't Come Easy to Life, in the Fast Lane by Joe Walsh, in the same show. This made every concert feel like a once-in-a-lifetime event. The All-Starr Band didn't just bring Ringo back into the spotlight, it introduced a new way of performing, where legends from different bands shared the stage as equals. Fans loved it, and the tours quickly became a worldwide success. The band played to sold-out crowds in Japan, Europe, and the US. In 1998, Ringo became the first Beatle to perform in Russia. As the years went on, new musicians kept the tradition alive. Peter Frampton, Jack Bruce from Cream, Sheila E., Steve Lukather from Toto, and Colin Hay from Men at Work all joined at different times. Even in 2024, the lineup continued to evolve with Hamish Stewart from Average White Band and Buck Johnson from Aerosmith. The concerts had a special energy that kept fans coming back. Many venues became regular stops, like Humphreys by the Bay in San Diego. The atmosphere was always intimate, making it feel like a personal experience rather than just another show. Ringo's message of peace and love made every performance more than just music. It became a celebration of the past and present, bringing generations of fans together. In 2001, Ringo released Ringo Starr and his All-Starr Band, the Anthology, a 3-CD collection featuring live recordings from multiple tours between 1989 and 2000. The album captured the magic of the shows, with Ringo performing hits like Photograph and With a Little Help from My Friends. The album also highlighted songs by his bandmates, including Joe Walsh's Life in the Fast Lane and Billy Preston's Will It Go Round in Circles. A rare recording of Peter Frampton performing Norwegian Wood added something special. The anthology didn't become a commercial hit, but it wasn't about sales. It was a tribute to the music and friendships that made the All-Starr Band so unique. Even with his success as a live performer, Ringo's drumming had often been underrated during his Beatles years. While John Lennon and Paul McCartney were known for their songwriting, Ringo was creating drum parts that shaped the sound of rock music. He focused on feel rather than complexity, giving each song exactly what it needed. His drumming on Rain introduced the world to backward tape loops. His work on A Day in the Life showed how subtle fills could change the entire mood of a song. His groove on Come Together became one of the most recognizable drum beats in history. As time passed, his influence became clearer. Phil Collins called him one of the greatest drummers of all time. Dave Grohl admired how his simple beats could be so memorable. In 2015, Ringo was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist, a rare honor for a drummer. Ringo Starr has always been known as the easygoing Beatle, but his life has been filled with controversies and struggles that many people don't talk about. In January 2008, Ringo made a comment that turned his hometown against him. During an appearance on the Jonathan Ross show, he was asked if he missed anything about Liverpool. Without hesitation, he said no. His timing could not have been worse. Just days earlier, he had helped launch Liverpool's celebrations as the European capital of culture. Many residents felt betrayed. The city had always embraced him as one of its own, and now it seemed like he had turned his back on them. The anger wasn't just online or in newspapers. In April 2008, vandals attacked a topiary sculpture of the Beatles that had been placed at Liverpool's South Parkway Transport Exchange. The sculpture had been created by Italian artist Franco Cavilli and featured all 4 band members. But only Ringo's figure was targeted. Someone decapitated his head with cutting tools and took it. It was never found. This wasn't the first time the sculpture had been damaged. Earlier, someone had tried to squash Ringo's head, but this time, the vandals made sure it was gone.